Have you ever been talking to someone and without a fight, without a warning, they just vanish? Why do some people suddenly stop answering, leave group chats, or quietly disappear from family dinners? What looks like coldness is often a survival move, not a character flaw. Psychology Simplified digs into that exact mystery. So what's really going on when someone cuts everyone off? Is it cruelty, cowardice, or something deeper? Often, the short answer is they're protecting a fragile system inside themselves. They've learned, sometimes long ago, that intimacy equals pain, so the smartest thing their nervous system can think to do is step away. That choice can feel baffling to people left behind, but to the person withdrawing, it can feel like the only way to breathe. What do psychologists call this? There's a name: emotional cutoff, a pattern identified in family systems work that describes how people reduce or end contact to manage unresolved emotional tension. Why does this happen? Often it begins in childhood, when expressing vulnerability wasn't safe, sadness was minimized, anger was punished, or needs were ignored. Over time, the person learns a rule: don't trust feelings here. That rule becomes the default strategy: avoid, withdraw, disappear, because it reliably reduces immediate pain. How does the body decide to vanish before the brain even makes a plan? That's where nervous system science helps explain the how. Stephen Porges' ideas about the autonomic nervous system show that our bodies run a constant safety check, sometimes called neuroception, that scans faces, tones, and situations for threat or safety. When that system reads danger, it can move us into fight, flight, or a shutdown mode that looks like emotional disappearance. In plain terms, the body flips a protective switch and distance follows. What about patterns and evidence? Research in family systems theory makes the point that emotional cutoffs are rarely random one-offs. They're an intergenerational pattern connected to how families manage anxiety. People who use cutoff as a coping move often repeat it across friendships, romantic relationships, and family ties, not because every relationship is toxic, but because the person hasn't been taught a different way to stay with discomfort and repair it. Why do they sometimes return later, or do they? Sometimes people reappear when their inner resources recover, or when the cost of isolation becomes greater than the risk of trying again. Other times, the pattern keeps repeating until someone learns new tools: naming feelings, tolerating small conflicts, asking for help. How do they learn that? Therapy, safe relationships, and practices that regulate the nervous system can teach the body it's possible to be vulnerable and survive. So what should you do when someone cuts you off, or when you notice yourself doing it? First, ask what's needed, not what's wrong. Is safety lacking? Is the person overwhelmed? Second, remember that leaving can be protection, not punishment. Third, if you're the one who withdraws, ask, what am I avoiding feeling? How can I practice staying present for 5 minutes of discomfort rather than running? Small experiments, short, honest messages, boundary setting, or asking for space with a time to reconnect help rewrite the old rule that closeness equals danger. And one last question: does this mean every disappearance should be forgiven? No. When a relationship is abusive or consistently harmful, cutting contact can be healthy and necessary. But when disappearance is a repeated pattern in otherwise healthy relationships, it signals a wound that can be healed. How long does healing take? There's no fixed timetable, but the path starts with curiosity instead of blame, with asking what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you.